Share Conference welcomes Crisis Mappers.
Hi, my name is Jaroslav, and I'm really happy to be here now in Belgrade. And what I would like to talk about now is something that we call Standby Task Force, and it's an online volunteer community for life mapping. What this project is about, this project basically leverages two current phenomena that we are facing in terms of development of new technologies and then new media. The one phenomenon is that today, with increased access to technology, people want to communicate, people want to share information, and they are sharing information not only about what they had for lunch or how great the party was last night, but they more and more share also information during crisis situations. It can be natural disasters, political crisis, etc., etc. And the second phenomenon is that there are thousands, maybe millions of people around the world who always want to get engaged. They want to help. They want to do something during these crisis situations. But sometimes they don't want just to send money to some charity or something. They want to get engaged. And the Standby Task Force is a project that is leveraging these two things. But let me go to the roots before we will tell you more about the Standby Task Force. Let me go back to the roots where we started. My colleague Patrick Meyer yesterday was talking about Ushahidi and crisis mapping, so I will just follow up and expand on what he was talking about. Just basically 1 year ago, there was a massive earthquake in Haiti, and more than 240,000 people were killed. And what we did as a volunteer crisis mappers community, we used the crisis mapping platform that is called Ushahidi, was developed in Kenya, to start collecting information from the ground, from the social media mainly, from traditional media, and we started creating a, let's say, life map of what's the situation on the ground, what's happening. And this effort was, the interesting part of this effort is that it was done not by traditional humanitarian agencies, but this was done by students, by young people. It started at Tufts University in Boston, but very soon we engaged also other universities and groups of students. And what was interesting, I don't want to talk about that much about the successes or about the exciting things about this. Patrick did a good job talking about it yesterday. I want to focus on what actually didn't went maybe very well, what were the problems, what were the issues that we were dealing with. So basically the first problem was that we were reactive, that we started doing this after the earthquake happened, after the crisis situation happened, which is not a good time to start doing things, because you're in emergency, things are changing, and you don't have much time to train people, etc. So something that started in a living room up there, we immediately started, we needed more people to help us to process the messages, to monitor the media sources, to geolocate them, to categorize them, etc., etc. And the problem was that we didn't know how to do it. All of us were beginners using this platform and dealing with the situation. So we had to quickly start thinking about how we're gonna do it effectively, how we design the workflows, how can we separate people in different teams and to do the media monitoring, to do the verification of information, etc., etc. And we started monitoring the social media, and so we designed some pretty nice workflows. We knew, okay, now this works, that's perfect. But 3 days later, we had a huge income of text messages because there was a phone number open for people in Haiti to report. So we had thousands of messages coming. So we had to immediately redesign the workflow and somehow deal with the avalanche of text messages coming directly from the ground and to deal with that situation. And after, let's say, 6 days, we had pretty decent workflows. We knew how to do it. And but then there was a major aftershock in Haiti, and immediately there was a huge another thousands of messages coming from Haiti. So we had to immediately start redesigning the workflows again. And then you had the messages, you had text messages. We found out that they are really urgent messages. So we need to have a team that is actually going into the database and trying to prioritize the messages that are more urgent than the others, so that we could send them directly to the responders who were using the information. And another problem that we were dealing with was connected to the messages that we were collecting. And I remember it was approximately about 3 days after the deployment, when we got a phone call from a guy who works for the FEMA, which is Federal Emergency Management Agency, the biggest emergency responder in the US. And he was encouraging us, like, go, you know, you are doing a good job, keep mapping, regardless whatever people say, just keep doing it. And he said, like, be careful about one thing. It's gonna be tough, it's gonna be rush. You will have to be dealing with really sensitive issues, really emotional issues coming from the ground. We know that because as a FEMA we have years of experience. So think about, you should definitely have some professional psychological support for your team, otherwise you will burn out or you will be completely devastated by the messages. And I thought at the time, I mean, obviously I'm not American, I was like, oh yeah, these Americans, they need psychological support for everything. Oh, we are cool, we are fine, it's, we keep going. And I wish I knew that, 3 days later I would wish, to have some psychological support, because you can see one of the text messages that were coming, people were sending messages, we are looking for our family members that are probably still buried under the rubble somewhere, or that those are really desperate messages. And then you expose the students to the stream of these desperate messages. So obviously, unless you are really cynical and a pathetic person, it moves you, and it does something with you, and you just cannot keep doing this for days and weeks, because you just burn out. You cannot deal with that forever. So that was another issue. We didn't have time to take care of the volunteers, because our priority was to be processing the messages, processing the reports as quickly as possible. So that was another issue, like how can we ensure that the volunteers know what to do, and there's a care taking care of them, and that we can really do it in a better organized way. And another issue that we were facing, one of the most amazing things about the project was that actually there were people all around the world interacting with the platform, helping in processing the messages. This you can see the locations of Haitian speakers, Haitians speaking in Creole, who were helping us translate the messages from Creole to English. They were all around the world, which was amazing. But at the same time, we started getting messages from responders from Haiti. They were saying like, yeah, we like your project, we like the map. So can we meet you? Where's your office in Port-au-Prince? And we were like, actually, we don't have an office in Port-au-Prince. We were like, where are you? It was like, yeah, we're kind of all around the place. We have some headquarters maybe in Boston, but then there are 10 other groups, organizations working with us on this. Then we have thousands of volunteers around the world. So actually, we are not definitely in Haiti. And the problem was that basically most of the coordination was going on the ground. You had teams of professional humanitarian responders on the airport in Port-au-Prince under these tents, who were coordinating the response efforts. And so we had to deal with this. We had to introduce ourselves to the traditional humanitarian community and tell them who we are, how we work, and find the ways how we can work together, how we can take our data, our information flows, and to fit them in the information flows that they have, the standard operating procedures that they are using. And it was difficult, because you are there on the ground knocking on the doors of different agencies and telling them, hi, I'm from USAID Haiti project. They said like, USAID, what is it? USAID, US Haiti, what is it? Well, that's actually African technology that is being used by volunteers all around the world. And they said like, yeah, well, who are you? And they got excited, so then we could start working together with them and start really, some more meaningful cooperation. One thing that we quickly realized is just that in terms of sustainability, we just cannot keep doing this for weeks and months. And we knew that this project should be in the hands of local community of Haitians. So we immediately started outreach in the local community, trying to find a local partner who could take the project and continue doing this. And we were successful in this, and by the end of summer our team was out of the project, out of Haiti, and now it's completely in the hands of the local community, who are managing their own crisis mapping platform. But this was not only about Haiti. I mean, I remember I was freaking out when I was in Haiti and found out that there's a massive earthquake in Chile, and I said like, oh shit, we don't even have enough capacity to finish, to work on the Haiti project, and now probably we should start a crisis map of Chile, so what are we gonna do? But luckily and amazingly, there was a great team at SIPA School at Columbia University in New York who immediately take on the operation, and they started basically doing the same thing we did in Haiti, training students, starting processing messages and visualizing it on a crisis on a crisis map. So that was another project that was that we were working on. And then in Pakistan, major floods in Pakistan, huge catastrophe. But what was interesting about this particular situation was that basically the people from Pakistan, the local community, asked us, students who were working in Haiti and Chile, and they said, like, we want to deploy this platform, but we know what you are doing. Please help us, tell us how we should do it, how we shouldn't do it, so that you can help us to really be effective quickly. So that was the beginning of something interesting and something way bigger. When we realized, okay, now we have trained hundreds of students around the world. How can we make it more organized for next time, that we are better prepared for future emergencies, so that we don't have to be reactive and train people again, from scratch. And that was the beginning of something bigger. And here you can see like how the whole coordination of the team works. I mean, it's mostly Skype, different Skype chat groups, people, in different groups, sharing information, communicating with each other. And now I would like to invite my dear colleague Anahi, who will tell you more about the Standby Task Force story.
No, it's not. Oh, yes, it is. Awesome. Okay, hi everybody. I'm Anahi, and what I want to tell you about is that what we learned after those three major emergencies that we were involved in, right? We were all students, more or less, and we find out that, you don't want to spend, whenever there is an emergency, the first 48 hours without sleeping in front of your computer trying to find out, how you can organize students and how you can organize a project. So the first thing that we learned is this, and this is whatever project you're ever going to be involved, that include whatever use of technology, being a ushahidi, being a mobile phone, being whatever kind of technology, you always have to have this in mind. And what this chart is saying is that the technology in whatever project you do is only 1%. Is actually, we say 10%, but I will say actually 1. Is that small dots on the top? That is your technology. The rest of the circle, that's your project. So once you have the technology and it's working and it's great and it's the most awesome technology you have, then you have to work on the rest. You have to work on the 90%. And that 90% is basically 3 components for me. The first one is go local. If you go into a country and you bring your technology, if you don't have ties with the local community, with the local workflow, and if you don't bring this technology into their hands, your project is just not going to work. And that's what we learned, for example, in Chile. We were mapping as crazy, we were gathering information, we were very excited about using the ushahidi platform, and then we find out that no one on the ground was using it, because we simply didn't have any connection with them. And the responders on the ground had their own workflows, had their own way to process information. So we realized, well, we've worked our ass off for like 6 months, and that was completely useless. But that was a great lesson learned. The second thing that you have to have in mind that it's in that 90% is the fact that you have to publicize what you do. You have to tell people what you're doing. You have to be open. You have to advertise what you're doing, because people need to understand what you do. Not only the responders, even the people on the ground, because no one is going to send you or share information with you if they don't know how you're actually using this information. And the third thing is strategy. Have a strategy in mind. You have to understand where you're going, what are your goals, and how you're going to get there. And this is very, very important, because sometimes people on the rush of doing something exciting, they just go, they start working on it, and then they realize that they don't have a goal, and that they haven't thought about, what is that I need to do to arrive there? What is my strategy? How I'm going to face all the challenges that are going to come out? So what I want to tell you about is a project that was incredibly successful because they realized that they had to work on the 90%. And this project was a project that I was involved through Freedom House. They contacted me and they said, well, we're working with bloggers and with people, digital activists in Egypt. That was before the revolution in Egypt. It was in September, well, actually it was in June last year. And so they contacted me and they said, well, those activists are using social media. They're using a lot of Facebook and Twitter and YouTube. They share information, but we want to find a way for them to use the Ushahidi platform to be able to monitor the parliamentary election in November 2011. Those elections were supposed to be very, very important in Egypt because it was the first time that the government was saying, well, if you get 10% at the election, then you can propose your own presidential candidate, which at the time was, kind of like already in itself a big revolution. So what happened was that I went there and I started doing training with Egyptian bloggers, the 6th of April movement, which is a very strong movement on Facebook. And I started teaching them how to use the tool. One of the most interesting part of that is that when I went there from Freedom House, they gave me a project proposal, right? So I brought into a country and I was like, oh, Freedom House told me to do this. And then what happened was that the activists took the project and completely turned it upside down. They said, no, this is what we're gonna do. And I think that in this case, what was amazing was that Freedom House said, well, okay, great. Let's them decide what they want to do. So this is what I would say, go local. And they basically redesigned the project entirely. They were from the country, they knew what they wanted to monitor, they knew how to do it. So they basically redesigned the project, we set up a Ushahidi platform. And what we did was that we basically end up by having 2,700 reports on the platform. There were like more than 200 pictures, 300 videos, and the most interesting part for me that 90% of the reports that we were collecting using Twitter, using Facebook, using mobile phones, were actually verified. We did such a massive outreach for the people on the ground that then we were able, whenever we received the report, to go back to other people on the ground and say, okay, can you verify this report? Can you tell us, if this is actually working? So basically, we had almost 60,000 people going and use the platform. But the way this was working was actually, for me, a very simple chart. We built 5 different units in 5 different regions in Egypt, and those units were completely independent one from the other. Each unit could work by itself by covering their own region. And that was our strategy. Each unit was composed by a regional coordinator, a verification team, and a mapping team. And what those teams were doing, they were processing information coming from the crowd, from NGOs, from journalists, and from the electoral monitors that we were training. This chart seems very simple, but it took us more or less 3 months to design it, by understanding how to do certain processes, how to collect the information, how to manage the information. So, what I was saying before about when you use a technology, one of the things that I love about when I do this kind of project is that once you teach someone how to use a technology and they understand it and they take it, then they can reuse it in whatever other project. You don't need to be there anymore. You don't need to teach anyone, anything, because they got it and they know much better than I do about how to use it and what the problems in their countries are. So what happened was that when in Egypt the revolution started, the same people that I was training 6 months ago, they set up again immediately another Ushahidi platform, and they started using exactly the same principle and the same structure to collect information and to be able to map on the map of Egypt what was actually happening around them. This, of course, was after the internet was reset up in Egypt. And another thing that they have done, which I think is pretty amazing, is that right now people are discussing about how to change the constitution in Egypt. So they have set up again another Ushahidi platform in which they can map the constitutional amendments. They can see who and where is asking for different amendments to the constitution. This is, I think, a very important tool for accountability for whoever is going to take, is going to go on the new Egyptian government. So this is what the big lessons that we learn. And this is that the crowd is always there and is ready to act. It's not true that you cannot influence your government or the decision or what is happening if you don't have the skills, if you're not an expert, if you're not in politics, if you don't have the power. People have the power, and they want to use it. They are there whatever thing happens because they care about their country. And they are there if there's an election, they are there if there's an emergency, they are always there. So what we realize is that, well, even the Egyptian model, it's not really sustainable because you need to send someone there to train them, to have the time. This is every time is always kind of like rushing, trying to understand, where you have to go and how you can work this out. So we decide, okay, we need a tool or something that will allow us to empower everybody in the world that wants to do something to actually be able to do it without us going there or without needing to have whatever particular skill set. So what we've done is that we gathered at the International Crisis Mappers Conference in October 2010, and we started talking about this. And we said, well, why don't we just set up an online community for live mapping? And we're going to call it the Standby Task Force. We're going to gather volunteers from all over the world that wants to do something, because we also realized that the same people that were working in Haiti then came back from Chile, and then they came back from Pakistan. So why don't we just gather all of them and we start teaching them how to use those tools? But not only the UCAD platform, there are lots of other tools available. And so if we teach them now how to use it, when there is an emergency or when something happened in their country, they can do it by themselves. And all these volunteers can support each other. If something happened in Africa, then we can have the volunteers from the US that are supporting the people in Africa doing their project. So we wanted to create a place where people could share information in between them and could help each other when something happened. So we decided that we're only going to work with open and non-proprietary data. We want to be completely open with what we do. We also decided that we're not going to get any money. We don't want to be paid for what we do. Those are volunteers, we are volunteers, the core team, it's all completely a voluntary idea, right? So we also set up different teams and different workflows that we're following. So basically what we said is that, okay, crisis mapping. What is crisis mapping? Crisis mapping in 4 components: information collection, visualization, analysis, and response. So information collection, we have an SMS team. Those are the people that process information coming from SMS if there's an emergency and a shortcode is in place. We have a media monitoring team. Those are, the Twitter and Facebook nerds, the people that spend hours and hours on Facebook and Twitter, and whenever something happens, they start following the right feeds. They know who's tweeting about what. And of course, they also monitor blogs and internet media and everything they can find on the net. And then we have a verification team. The verification team does cross-verification in between different sources. If there's an article about something and we don't know if it's true or not, we start monitoring every single other source that we can find. And if we find a video or a picture or another media source that is reporting the same information, then we can say this is verified. Then we have visualization component. How do we visualize information? For now, we're using the UCAD platform, but we're more than happy to use whatever other tool is available and effective. We have a geolocation team that finds the GPS coordinates of each event that we report, so that if someone on the ground needs to act on this, they know exactly where to go. They have a report team. They deal with categorization. Each information that we collect is categorized: water, food, IDPs, everything, it has a category. And then we have, of course, a technical team that deals with the technologies that we use. Then we have the analysis. Analysis is the main important thing if you're working on processing information, because raw data can be important for single actors to act in the field, but the analysis is what is useful for people that design policies. And you want people that design policies to have this information to understand what they need to do. And we're going to explain that, I think, a little bit later on how you can actually use effectively analysis, especially when you're dealing with big emergencies. And then we have the response component of crisis mapping, which is basically we collect or we ask for everyone that works in the humanitarian field on the ground to join our team. So if something happened, if an emergency happened, we have a connection with people that are actually working on the ground that can not only advise us on what kind of information they need, but they can also be our link with the ground to understand what exactly we need to do. So these are our volunteers. When we formed the Standby Task Force, we had 150 volunteers. Now we have 460. And they are all over the world. I don't know any of them. I talk to them almost every day because we use Skype to exchange information, just to talk. And one of the main interesting part is that whenever there is a deployment, you end up talking to people on Skype for hours and hours, and you end up knowing them, sometimes better, than I know my friends that I see at the bar drinking a beer. One of the most amazing story that I remember about one of our volunteers was during the Libya deployment. There was one of our volunteers that came online after hours that she was not online. So I said, "Oh, hi Melissa, how are you? What are you doing?" And she was like, "Oh, I'm in a parking lot on the side of a highway with my 2 kids sleeping on the back of the car, and I just have my doodle so I can go online and I can actually process some reports." And I think this is pretty amazing. Like, we have volunteers we have one volunteer that is 85 years old. We have musicians that are part of our volunteers. We have people that have a completely different, skill set, but they just want to help. They have internet connection, they have a computer, that's great, that's enough. So I want to just give you this because I think it's very important to always put a face behind, any dots that you're seeing on whatever map. It's always important to remember that when you talk about volunteers' effort, you're actually talking about people. You're talking about, human resources together that can do something important. They can actually really influence and change the course of action. We've seen that in Egypt, right? And we can see this also in the Standby Task Force. It's people that want to do something good, and they bring everything they have in this. And this is enough to really change the world, because you bring people together and you allow them to actually do something meaningful.